So the title of my research paper is Relationship Between Media Consumption and Adolescent Self-Image and Value. So let's start with the introduction part. So the reason I want to study this topic is children and teens are spending more time than ever on screens. A survey showed that from 2019 to 2021, screen use among teens and tweens increased by 17%. On average, teens now spend about 5.5 hours per day on screens, while teens spend almost 8.5 hours per day. So media like computers, laptop, and iPad are now commonly used for learning. So this shift to digital learning has made education more accessible, but we need to ensure that children and adolescents are in a healthy and safe environment. The major concern is addiction to social media and video games. Those are the things that are designed to be addictive, keeping user hooked. Studies show that excessive use can lead to increased family interaction and increase more family problems, like harming the relationship between family members. And the reason those media become so addictive is because social media and video games trigger the release of dopamine, a feel-good chemical in the brain. So this can create a cycle of seeking more pleasure and reinforcement. Unfortunately, we may feel happy when we are on our social media or video game. Later, we will actually feel more lonely, especially for children and teens. So to understand how media influences self-image and values, my study will compare students in public school who has regular media exposure to students in ward-off schools who has very limited media use. By studying their image habits, content preferences, and parents' attitude to explore how media shapes their self-perception and values. And then the method. So I'm going to use a mixed method approach with quantitative and qualitative method. And in quantitative phrase, I'm going to do self-reported scales or questionnaires that are designed to measure the self-image and value systems. So the self-reported scales and questionnaire will collect the information like general personal information like age, gender. So the quantitative phase, I'm going to do the follow-up interview with open-ended questions and to talk about their attitude, their experiences, their thoughts that related to media influence on self-image and values. So for the variables, the independent variable will be media exposure, and the dependent variable will be self-image. So sampling. I'm going to have two group of population. So group A. So group A would be high school students in public school in the Bay Area. And group B will be high school students from Waldorf School in Bay Area. So in group A, I'll randomly select I randomly select 3 different school districts that represent a wider range of diversity. So, so I choose this 3 school district: the San Francisco Unified School District, and the second one is Auckland Unified School District, and third one is San Jose Unified School District. And after I select those 3 school districts, I randomly selecting 3 high schools. So which is grade 9 from 12 from the above 3 school districts. So the schools are Mission High School from San Francisco Unified School District, and Auckland High School from Auckland Unified School District, and Leland High School from San Jose Unified School District. And after that, I randomly selecting 3 classes within the selected schools from different grades. So I'm going to select total of 9 classes. And after that, I will randomly selecting 30 students from each selected class. So which make the sample size 270. So for the group B population, since there's only 3 Waldorf school in Bay Area, so I don't have too much choice. So the only 3 schools are Waldorf School of the Peninsula and San Francisco Waldorf School and East Bay Waldorf School. But the good thing is, even I cannot do it randomly, but the location of these 3 schools are actually represented this area, except for Waldorf School of the Peninsula, which is located in Los Altos. The other 2 schools, San Francisco and East Bay Waldorf School, are actually the same for the group A population, San Francisco and also Auckland. So after I choose the 3 schools, so I randomly selecting 1 class within these 3 schools from different grades. The reason I only choose 1 class is because Waldorf School, they are private school and they have a relatively smaller population. So like each grade, they only have 1 class. So totally about 3. So totally is totally 3 classes. And then randomly selecting 10 students from each selected classes. So for this group B population, I'm going to have 30 samples in this 30 participants in this group. And pretest. So I'm going to do pretest for all the participants. So the pretest, including the personal information questionnaire. So I'm going to collect the basic information, including age, gender, race, siblings, parents' education level, and parents' attitude towards the media exposure, and also the self-reported questionnaire to assess the self-image and values before the study. So in the self-image part, I'm going to ask their personal opinion about their physical appearance, body image, skin color, self-esteem, self-assurance, social skills, personality, and comparison with other people. And for the values, ask their opinion about their family, how do they feel about the community, the school, peers, education, and important person in their life and important characteristics they think, and how to define success. So then it's a experimental and control group and post-test. So I'm going to have control group, which is the participant from Word of School. What made Word of School becomes a nature control group is because Word of School has very limited media exposure, that their students has very limited media exposure, which makes them to become a nature control group. So the experiment group will be the participant from public school. The reason they become experiment group is because most of the students, they have regular media exposure. So that experiment period, I'm going to, after the pretest, there will be a 1 month experiment period to monitor and record the participants' media exposure each week by using the self-reported questionnaire to collect the quantitative information like time, duration, and frequency, and the qualitative information about like type of media, particular content. So the post-test, I'm going to have the follow-up individual online interview to collecting data about whether is there any change about self-image and values after the experiment. So the reason I want to have the interview is because I'm going to ask more open-ended questions to encourage participants to discuss their experiences in the process. Like, is there any particular ways media influence their self-image and values? And yeah, just so I'll be able to explore more deeper. And the data analysis. So in data analysis, a dependent sample t-test will be used to compare the pre-test and post-test scores between the experimental group, which is public school students, and the control groups, which is Word of School students. This would determine if there are statistically significant differences in self-image and values influenced by media exposure. So the t-test compares the means of self-image and values scores, calculate the t-value and p-value, and determine if the observed differences is statistically significant. If the t-test yields significant score, it indicates a notable difference in self-image and values based on the media usage between the two sample groups. So after the data analysis, which is discussion and conclusion. So in discussion and conclusion, I find some studies related to my topic, and I did some summaries for them. So the studies have examined the influence of social media on adolescent self-image, particularly in relation to body image among girls adolescents. So one study conducted by Papagiorgio, Fisher, and Cross in 2022 revealed that constant appearance comparison on social media can negatively impact girls' body image, leading to appearance concerns and dissatisfaction. Another study by Griffins, Castle, and others in 2018 focus on the effect of exposure to thinspiration and fitspiration images on social media. We find that frequent use of image-centric platform was associated with increased exposure to these images and more frequent appearance of comparison. It would lead to severe eating disorders. So, however, research on media influence on adolescents' values is quite limited compared to self-image. A study by Yu and Nan peers in 2021 explored how mass media self-esteem, materialistic values, and schools affect adolescents' buying impulsiveness. It revealed that schools can significantly increase materialistic values, especially when exposure to mass media is high. Reducing mass media exposure could potentially weaken the negative impact of materialistic values on adolescents. So this finding shed light on the potential consequences of media use on adolescents' self-image and values. So the next part will be potential results and implication. So in this part, the literature review suggests that media exposure significantly influences the self-image and values of adolescents. Higher media exposure is related to negative self-image and values, including unrealistic body images and increased comparisons. Public school students with more higher media exposure are more likely to develop unrealistic body images and engage in materialistic values. Conversely, word-of-school students, because they has limited media exposure, they will be more likely to have more positive self-image and values, emphasizing self-acceptance and inner self-exploration over external stimulations. So the implication based on the literature review highlights the negative effects of harmful social media content on adolescents' self-image and values. The problem of one-sided images in the media can mislead and develop stereotypes and negative values among students. So parents, educators, and policymakers can work together to promote sensitive body image and help adolescents to critically evaluate the contents in the media that may negatively impact their self-image and values. So the limitation of my studies are, there are several limitations in my study to consider. First is the confounding variable. It is hard to control the potential variables such as parents' attitudes, peer pressure, peer influence, and socioeconomic status, which are all factors that may influence the development of students' self-image and values. Especially in my study, the participants are adolescents, so they are still in the process of shaping their self-image and value. And also they are very sensitive and easily to influence by their peers. So to enhance the validity of the findings, further studies with different variables or additional analysis are needed. And then another limitation is, not like in the laboratory environment, there is less control over media exposure in the nature environment. And also the self-reported questionnaire may introduce some errors, like participants have recall errors or they have personal bias. So conducting experiment in a controlled laboratory setting could minimize the errors. But ethical consideration must be addressed since the participants are adolescents. And lastly is the representativeness of the sample. Since the samples were selected from specific areas, especially participants from Waldorf School, considering that the Bay Area is a very diverse area, it limits the generalizability of the findings to other regions and populations in the Bay Area. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening and watching.